They have a combined 12 years in the National Football League. They combined for 65 career sacks, 232 tackles, 1 Pro Bowl selection, and 1 Employee of the Month award.
That's just a straight shooter with upper management written all over him.
It's Train and Grose on the All AZ Podcast Network.
Welcome in episode 97, Train and Grose, B-Train, Bertrand Berry, Mike Grose, Sean Crespin, coming to you on a stormy Tuesday night in the Valley of the Sun. You might get interrupted in the background, B-Train, by the thunder at my house is ridiculous tonight. It's like summer storms in Arizona.
Yeah, it's crazy. We had such beautiful weather leading up to the Super Bowl and Super Bowl Sunday, and as soon as they handed out the Vince Lombardi, the clouds rolled in and the temperature dropped. It seemed like night and day, the tale of two cities. And we've had nothing but cold weather ever since, and I'm trying to figure out what the heck happened to the 70s.
All the visitors are gone, and they took it away.
Yeah.
All right, B-Train, episode 97. I'm going to give you 5 names because I couldn't break this down myself. Before you dialed in, Sean and I were talking about this, and there's an article that I found, and I'm going to go in reverse order, what they have from the 5th best 97 all the way to what they call the best 97. Number 5, Cameron Hayward.
Okay.
Number 4, Cornelius Bennett. Number 3, Leroy Glover. Yeah. Number 2, Bryant Young. And number one on your 97 list, Simeon Rice.
Wow.
That's what I said.
Ahead of Bryant Young?
That's what I said.
Wow. Ahead of Leroy Glover? Well, he could be ahead of Leroy Glover, but wow.
I mean, yeah, Bryant Young's numbers, man.
He's got that what we call the gold jacket. So, Simeon has been eligible for the gold jacket, and he doesn't have anyone. He doesn't have one of those. So, and plus, Bryant Young is a former teammate of mine at Notre Dame, so he's number 1 on my list as far as all-time 97 because he also wore 97 in college as well.
I should have just adjusted it just to have that Notre Dame influence there for you. All right, as you alluded to at the beginning, B-Train, the Super Bowl is in the rearview mirror, and it was a hell of a game. Kansas City Chiefs with the 3-point win here in Arizona, but just a fascinating game. A double-digit lead for the Eagles at halftime. Adjustments that the Chiefs, Andy Reid, and that whole staff made, and they come out and they outscore a really, really good Philadelphia Eagles defense and secured that win. I mean, it was quite the second half for the Kansas City Chiefs.
It really was, Mike, and I think if you didn't know this before the outcome of the game was determined, you know it now that coaching really matters. And I think for the Kansas City Chiefs, you saw up close and personal just how valuable Andy Reid is. We talk about Patrick Mahomes and his gutty performance and getting through the ankle injury and all that kind of stuff, and deservedly so. He was the MVP. But the way that they were able to figure out this Philadelphia Eagles defense, which no team had really figured out all season long, and Mike, they put up 31 points like it was going out of style. The second half, they scored on every single possession they got the ball. I mean, they could not stop them. It was like a hot knife through butter. And we hadn't seen the Philadelphia Eagles look like that all season long. No sacks, no real pressures on Patrick Mahomes. It just looked like a completely different team and a completely different unit than what we had seen all year long.
Yeah, and obviously, deservedly so, a lot of attention going to the Kansas City offense. But, they held that Philly offense that was pretty much unstoppable in the first half to just 11 second-half points. And, that to me, if it was one of those situations where the last team to have the ball, that's saying, I think that the Kansas City defense really made a name for themselves as well. Overshadowed by the offense, but a hell of a second half of that defense.
Yeah, I think the difference in the game is the fact that you saw Patrick Mahomes. Other than that one play that re-injured his ankle, he was pretty much free. He was pretty much clean all game long. There weren't any times where I saw him on the ground. I didn't see him get hit. I didn't see him get pressured. And for a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, who had amassed 78 sacks heading into the Super Bowl, you thought that was going to be the story of this game. Would this Kansas City Chiefs offensive line be able to hold up against that pressure from the Philadelphia Eagles? And I think they more than held their own. I think they were dominant in that game, especially when you talk about the second half and the fact that they were up and down the field and doing whatever they wanted to do from an offensive standpoint. It was just very impressive. You have to give the Kansas City Chiefs a lot of credit. Mike, the two best defenses that we saw in the NFC, you saw 38 put up on the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl, and you also saw 44 points put up on the San Francisco 49ers in their house by the same Kansas City Chiefs offense. So, one, they don't really see this the tale of two conferences. One conference was really strong all year, and you could tell by how hard it was to get out of the AFC. And then you saw when the best of the AFC played against the NFC, it really wasn't a whole lot of competition.
B-Train, I want to ask you about, there's so many individual plays that go into it, but at the very end of the game, if you recall, Chiefs were driving for that go-ahead, what turned out to be the go-ahead field goal. But, like happens in the NFL, the Eagles were going to let them score. But Jerick McKinnon heads up, went down, stayed in bounds right about the 1 or 2 yard line. And, what a heads up play. And, here's a guy who, he's been around for a little while. He's played in his first Super Bowl, chance to score a touchdown in the Super Bowl. And he had the wherewithal to go down and keep that clock running so that they could run it all the way down to, I believe they kicked it at 8 seconds is where they ultimately kicked that game-winning field goal. But just a heads-up play by Jerick McKinnon in that situation that, again, when you think about it, a guy, you get a chance, you're in the biggest game ever, and you get a chance to cross that goal line, but he had the wherewithal to go down. And he didn't have any teammates around him. If you look at the pictures and the photos from when he scored, all the Chiefs players were trailing that play because it was such a well-called play. But, what a great individual play, great insight.
Yeah, it really was, Mike. And you saw the Philadelphia Eagles doing the same thing. They wanted him to score, so there wasn't much resistance on that particular play. But he, in that moment, had enough football IQ to do the right thing. And I think instead of getting in the end zone, he's going to get a big fat ring on his hand come June or July, whenever they have the ring ceremony in Kansas City. And so, yeah, you would love to have that touchdown glory in a Super Bowl, but I think having a Super Bowl ring saying that you are the best in the world, I think that'll be a little more satisfying. And I think the details, Mike, the situational football that Andy Reid pressed upon his team, and I'm sure at some point they talked about that on the sidelines before they went out for that drive, and he was heads up enough to remember or to have that wherewithal himself, and it just speaks to that team being ready for the moment. The moment was not too big for the Kansas City Chiefs. It wasn't too big for the Philadelphia Eagles. It just came down to a few plays here and there, and you have to give both teams credit. It was a great game. It was a great way to end the season, and you walked away very impressed with both teams and both quarterbacks in particular, and that's not something that you can usually say in a Super Bowl.
All right, a couple other things related to the Super Bowl, B-Train, just in quick order. That holding penalty on the Eagles towards the end that a lot of people got up in arms about. You look at it, and the one hand people are going to say, well, you can't have referees deciding the game, but clearly the replay showed that he had both hands, grabbed him around the waist on that play, and I'm of the mind, and you tell me, you played, I didn't play. If it's a penalty in the first quarter, it should be a penalty in the fourth quarter. Is that a fair statement? And your thoughts on that play that the referees called holding on?
Mike, it's a very fair statement. I think anytime that you look at the referees, it's a tough job to be a referee. We've talked about that at length at previous podcasts. But when you see it, you have to call it. And the thing about Bradbury is that was the second time he had a situation against Juju Smith-Schuster. If you remember in the first half, there was a slant pattern where Juju got up and he was very demonstrative in that situation. He wasn't demonstrative in the one at the end of the game, but in the first half, he really felt like he was interfered with and not afforded the opportunity to catch that pass from Patrick Mahomes. And so he admitted after the game that it was indeed a hold. He just said he thought that the refs would let it go. And if the guy that is called for the penalty is willing to admit that and be man enough to admit it, then I think fans have to accept the fact that it was the right call. The refs got it right. Yeah, you don't like to see a game come down to a penalty, but it really didn't come down to the penalty, Mike. There were many other plays during the course of that game that decided that game, and I know people are going to say it was rigged, and of course, with the Aaron Foster statement that he made a few weeks ago, they're going to bring that nonsense up. But it was a very well officiated game. It was a very well played game. I think the halftime show was all that in the bag of chips, in my opinion. The Star Spangled Banner was all that in the bag of chips. Everything about this game was A+. The all-female flyover for the national anthem, everything about it was just A+. I was very satisfied with the end of the season, and I look very much forward to the start of the 2023 season in a couple months.
What about speaking of very satisfied, what about the playing surface at State Farm Stadium? That's getting a lot of headlines, a lot of attention. Said it was too slippery. Players couldn't get their footing sometimes. You played, what are your thoughts on the field surface there at State Farm Stadium?
I was very disappointed in the playing surface. I know that the NFL wants to try to put together the best surface possible for a Super Bowl, and the fact that State Farm Stadium is a natural grass stadium with the platform that's rolled in and out to be tended to and to be grown in optimal sunlight. I think it was not the time to experiment with a new field. They tried to grow this new field with all this technology, and it flopped. And to see players out there slipping and sliding throughout the course of the game, that's not what you want to see for the game's biggest stage. And I thought that the NFL tried to get too cute and try to be too forward thinking in their technology. And they should have just had the regular grass that's always on there. For many years, Mike, that surface was voted the best surface to play on in the entire NFL. And it wasn't broke, so they didn't need to fix it. And unfortunately, they tried to get a little cute and it backfired.
Yeah. When you guys would go to different stadiums around the league and not knowing weather and all the things that go into it, how many on a natural grass surface, how many pairs of cleats would you bring to a game?
2. You bring a pair of molded cleats and you bring a pair of 7 studs. The 7 studs were if there was inclement weather and you were going to need to have extra footing. And the moldeds were kind of like the Cadillacs. We call those the Cadillacs. When you wear the moldeds, they feel the best on your feet because they are basically a surface that covers your whole foot. The 7 studs are strategically placed at the bottom of your shoe, and there's different pressure points on your feet that are affected by the 7 studs. And so the moldeds were always preferred, but depending on the weather, depending on the situation, and depending on the position, you always had to do what was going to help you do your job the most efficiently and effectively.
All right, last thing. You can't talk about the Super Bowl without talking about the halftime show. And I cheated. I read your tweets, so I know how you felt. But, man, that production that they put together for Rihanna, man, that was mind-blowing.
Mike, I thought they did a great job. I know for her to come out and with the announcement that she's pregnant, congratulations to her, and I believe it's A$AP Rocky as the father. I thought she did a masterful job. To have that new energy and to have all of her classic songs to be put in, I think it was like a 12, 13 song montage. I thought they did a great job with it. And it was refreshing. Although she didn't move as much as you'd like to see her move, well, if she's with child, then you can kind of understand. And so I was very entertained. I didn't leave to do anything other than to go to the bathroom when the game started and until it finished. So I just thought all around it was a great production, and the game was theater. It had drama. It had back and forth. It had everything you want in a championship game. And like I said, I walked away very satisfied and looking forward to the upcoming season.
Yeah. No, I thought it was, man, just the production. Like they had, it was the stage floating in the middle of the stadium, and at the end, the fireworks that they had. What a great look for the stadium out there in Glendale. On top of all that, look, I always joke around because you see people on social media when they put their 2 cents worth in about who the halftime act is or whatever. I know at this point I'm not the target audience, but I found it to be really enjoyable, and I thought they put on a hell of a show in between a great game. I thought it was great, and unfortunately, I don't play for Andy Reid because I guess he threatened to bench anybody that ventured out to check out her halftime show. Anybody that wanted to venture out of the locker room, but no, I thought it was I thought it was amazing.
It really was. And Mike, the last thing about it was the weather. The weather cooperated. It was a beautiful day. The roof was open. It was just a perfect scene at State Farm Stadium. Everything went off smoothly from my eyes. I'm sure there was probably some glitches here and there, but they made it look like it was a seamless transition from the game to the halftime show back to the game, and the trophy presentation, all the different elements that go into the game, I thought went off smoothly to the naked eye.
Yep, 100%. All right, we'll step aside here. On the other side, we got coaching news here in Arizona. All 5 of the head coaching positions now B-Train filled around the National Football League. We'll talk about that next on Training Grose. Welcome back in, Training Grose. Give us a follow on Twitter. Easy enough, at Training Grose. All right, B-Train, as we teased at the end of the last segment, the coaching carousel for the time being has stopped spinning in the National Football League. The Arizona Cardinals, the last of the 5 teams to fill their openings, and they tap Eagles defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon as the new head man here in Arizona, replacing Cliff Kingsbury. Believe what you want. They knew they wanted this guy the whole time, so they had to wait for the Super Bowl to be over, or they settled for him. I mean, it's there's, speaking of conspiracy theories and all that, I don't know what to believe, but hey, they've got their guy Jonathan Gannon, who led a really, really good defense in the Philadelphia Eagles for the last couple of years. He is the new head man here in Arizona.
I think for Jonathan Gannon, I know that it is a great moment for him. I know for a lot of other coaches, a lot of assistant coaches around the league, in particular black coaches, assistant coaches, it just seems like more of the same. I don't have anything negative about Coach Gannon. I hope he comes in and does a great job. But I can't help but keep going back to Eric Bieniemy and how he continues to be looked over. And it's to the point where you just worry, like, will he ever get that shot? Because if this wasn't the time, when was going to be the time? You'd rather go with 2 assistant coaches that lost in the Super Bowl than one who's been an offensive coordinator for the better part of 5 almost 6 years. And for him to continue to still be looked over after his 3rd Super Bowl and 2nd Super Bowl win, you just wonder, what does he have to do to get a job as a head man and to have a franchise take a chance on him and let him lead an organization where they're trying to go?
I couldn't agree with you more. And in fact, before you dialed in, Sean and I were having this exact same conversation. Like, what does Eric Bieniemy have to do? What does he have to do at this point? And, I'm not going to speak to the other 4 jobs, so I don't know the details, ins and outs, whatever. But look at this job here. What's needed here? You need a guy that can get in with this quarterback and make him right. That's really it. And a lot of the stories were like, hey, people don't want this job because of the quarterback. Fine.
Mm-hmm.
You look at, and I'm not trying to compare Kyler Murray to Patrick Mahomes, but you have to believe that Eric Bieniemy has played a huge part in the development of Patrick Mahomes into what you see today in Kansas City. And, the other thing that, when you're hiring a coach, I would imagine, just like when you hire a boss, in a workplace, you've got to have somebody that can come in and say, here's my credentials. Here's what I've done, right? And if you're in that Cardinals locker room, you know who Eric Bieniemy is. You know who the Kansas City Chiefs are. Hell, you saw them week 1 in your building and what they did to you.
Right.
So I don't know. And again, I can't explain it. I don't know. And like I said, I hope Jonathan Gannon does fine. I hope Shane Steichen, he got the job in Indianapolis. D'Amico Ryans, all of them. But I don't understand why Eric Bieniemy doesn't have a job. And now they're talking about him maybe going to Washington as an offensive coordinator or something like that. What more does a man have to do? What does he have to do?
No, I don't know, Mike, but I don't like the idea of him having to go to Washington to prove anything.
No.
The man has 3 Super Bowl appearances. He's got 5 straight AFC appearances. He's got the same credentials that Andy Reid has, and that that the rest of the coaching staff has, and Patrick Mahomes. They all share the same credit. When you talk about Eric Bieniemy, he's been to 5 straight AFC Championship games. He's been to 3 out of the last 4 Super Bowls. He's got 2 Super Bowl wins to his credit. So if you're going to say those things about Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, you have to say it about Eric Bieniemy and Steve Spagnuolo. Those guys are just as deserving as anybody else. And there's also another head coach, Mike, who was once upon a time the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts and also the Detroit Lions, who had a winning record in both of those stops and had the Detroit Lions playing really good football, who has not sniffed an opportunity to get another head coaching job. And you just wonder, what does he have to do? Because all you have to do is say he had a winning record with the Detroit Lions. Yeah. We know what the Lions have been in recent history. And for him not to have an opportunity to coach another team, it's inexplicable, Mike. It's inexplicable.
You're talking about Jim Caldwell, who had a winning record as the head coach of the Detroit Lions. So that right there puts him in rarefied air in terms of.
Just let that sink in for a second.
And now his last 2 seasons in Detroit, he was back-to-back 9-7 records with the Lions. And everybody's patting Campbell on the back. Dan Campbell, because he got him to 8 wins. Got him all the way back to 8 wins. Well, hell, Jim Caldwell, when he got fired after his last season, he had back-to-back 9 wins, back when he only played 16 games. So,
and Mike, we're talking about his. So I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm interrupting. Go ahead, man.
No, I said you do that in Detroit. Why hasn't he gotten another shot someplace else? Because you look at where coaching graveyards are. Detroit Lions is at the top of that list.
Mike, all you got to do is say he had a winning record with the Detroit Lions, and the first head coaching job he took the Indianapolis Colts to the Super Bowl. He was a longtime assistant, of Tony Dungy, and when he was given the opportunity, he had Peyton Manning as an MVP, and he went to the Super Bowl and lost to the New Orleans Saints. But the man got to a Super Bowl as a head coach. He had the Detroit Lions in the playoffs as a head coach. And you're telling me those 2 things by themselves aren't reasons to give this man an opportunity to run an organization? Eric Bieniemy, Jim Caldwell, look, I understand. I don't want to just say it's just black coaches that are getting overlooked, because I'm sure there are some white coaches and other ethnicities that are getting overlooked, but those two just stick out to me like a sore thumb because of the resumes that they have to their credit, and the fact that they haven't even sniffed. And these guys were coordinators for 2+ years, and then they're fast tracked into a head coaching gig, and gigs that aren't necessarily just horrible gigs. Like, they have an opportunity to turn that thing around rather quickly. It's not like those teams are bereft of talent or opportunities to get better.
I'm born and raised in Detroit. In my lifetime, the Lions have played 13 playoff games in my entire life, and Jim Caldwell has 2 of them.
Wow.
Right?
And he can't get a job anywhere else.
That tells you all you need to know right there.
Yeah.
Going back to that list of coaches that have been hired, I know everybody's putting all their eggs in Sean Payton's basket. He goes in, he's cleaned house, told Russ he can't have his coaching special coaches in. Maybe you got to give up your office and maybe you hang out with the rest of the team. So Sean Payton's doing his thing. The bar set pretty high. But, I think we talked about this last week. Sean Payton comes in here and he's not, make Sean Payton to the Broncos doesn't make them better than the Chargers, doesn't make them better than the Chiefs, I don't think. I don't think they can be as bad as
it doesn't make them better than the Raiders.
There you go. Shane Steichen to Indianapolis again. It's kind of like the offensive version, literally the offensive version of Jonathan Gannon, right? You did what you did against the Super Bowl, but here's the thing: Jonathan Gannon. Look at the defensive roster that he had with Philadelphia, and look what he has here. And I would venture to say that there's not as many weapons in Indianapolis either. So there's a long road to hoe there.
Mike, thinking about Irsay, and he continues to repeat the same pattern. If you remember, when the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl in 2017, he took a coach from that coaching staff and made them the head coach. Didn't work out so well. So then what do? 5 years later, you go and get an assistant coach from the Philadelphia Eagles, an offensive coordinator, and you try to see if this thing is going to work. The only thing that you can say that he has an opportunity to do is he has the chance to get a young, talented quarterback where you saw, the coach, previously he wasn't able to have that young draft pick, that top draft pick, to be able to groom and to bring him along. He had, the Matt Ryans, he had the guys that were just older, Carson Wentz, it just, and then you think of with the Chargers, God, I can't think of his name, quarterback, that longtime quarterback of the Chargers.
Phillip
Rivers. So you had these three relics that of quarterbacks, that he had to work with. And it was like, okay, can he get a quarterback that's young and innovative that can maybe move and do some things? Now you're seeing Steichen with that opportunity because he's probably going to, get a young quarterback from this upcoming draft, and we'll see how this thing plays out.
What about Frank Reich, Carolina? You talk about a team that needs a quarterback. Some people say Frank Reich got a short end of it in Indianapolis. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but he landed on his feet in Carolina. But there's nobody there. Maybe they take a run at Derek Carr now that he's been released by the Raiders, or Jimmy Garoppolo apparently is available. Because if you're Frank Reich, I think you'd rather go the veteran route right now than draft it and roll the dice there.
I just feel really bad for Steve Wilks. I thought he did an exceptional job. I thought he should have got more consideration. Again, Mike, he did the job that he was asked to do. It was a tough situation that he walked into, and I thought he did an admirable job of really galvanizing that team. And they played hard for him. They played well for him. and for him to really not even get a shot. I mean, I just thought that was disappointing. But for Coach Wright, he did get jobbed at Indianapolis, and he's going to get another opportunity. And Mike, the beat goes on, and you just wonder, will this ever change? Will we ever see it where coaches that have put in the work and put in the time, will they get their fair shake, or will this always be that new hot young coordinator that's having this meteoric rise to the top and snatching these jobs before anybody else can even get a thought? So I don't know. I wish these coaches well. I just hope that these owners and these front office GMs would take a more a deeper look into some of the candidates that they may not be as high on, because there's for every one of these Steinke's and Frank Reichs and everybody else and Gannons, there's a Mike Tomlin that's waiting, that's a diamond in the rough, that all he needs is that opportunity.
Have you changed? We talked about this one because it was I think it was the first job that was actually filled. And DeMeco Ryans, I think it was second after Carolina. DeMeco Ryans goes to your hometown with the Texans. And before that job was filled, you're like, man, I would be really, really careful about that job because of everything you just said, the ownership, the way they've been running that team lately, and everything that goes with it. DeMeco Ryans, the job that he did as the defensive coordinator with the 49ers is unquestionably good. But now he's got a hell of a job in front of him, trying to reestablish and build credibility back to this Texans team.
Mike, he's got an uphill battle, one, because they don't have a lot of talent. I know they're going to be picking very high, and they're probably going to go with Bryce Young as their quarterback for the foreseeable future. But I don't know. It's either going to be him or C.J. Stroud, one of those two. You don't want to have those young quarterbacks not surrounded with enough talent to offset the lumps that they're going to have to go through, because he's going to take his lumps. I mean, we've seen that with young quarterbacks with a lack of talent around them. They don't look so great. And it's hard for any young quarterback to look great if you don't have guys that can really catch the ball and make things happen once you put it in their hands. So I know for Coach Ryans, he's going to have all the opportunity in the world in that first couple years. It's a dream job for him. He was drafted by the Houston Texans. He lived in Houston, so it somewhat made sense. He was familiar with the organization, but I would be very leery of the McNair family and everything that has gone on with them. And we've seen in the past, Mike, there's just been so much smoke around this organization. You just wonder how much of a fair shake will he truly get with the Houston Texans.
So we'll close it out here with the hometown team, the Monty Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon. You talk about a lot of work to do. This team certainly, there's so many places that they need to improve. They need to get better. We talked about this at the beginning of the year, that roster constitution, right? The buildup of that, what you've got, and you look at how the offseason unfolded leading into 2022, right? So many questions. They walked into the season not knowing the situation with their starting center. It was just question after question, assistant coaches, and just a bad offseason. You hope the two of these guys for the Cardinal fans, and I know you are very partial to Cardinal fans from your time here. This team won one game in this building this year. One game. That was the joke after the Super Bowl. Kansas City won more games in that building than the Cardinals did this year. So you look at the job that the two of these guys have, whether or not they were the right hires or not, they're what we got here in town.
Yep.
And starting, February 14th, the hire was made official. There's a lot of work to be done.
Mike, the biggest thing that needs to be done is to establish what type of relationship is Jonathan Gannon going to have with Kyler Murray? And you're talking about a franchise quarterback who just got his money, who is coming off of a reconstructive ACL surgery, and a guy that's kind of been known as a malcontent, kind of aloof. And that is the biggest concern, I think, going into this offseason, knowing that he's not even going to be available to around Halloween or early October at best case scenario. There's going to be a lot of conversations to be had between the two of them. And, Monty Ossenfort is going to have to come in as well. And they're going to have to really put their collective heads together and figure out how to solve that issue, because that is one that was never, ever settled. It was never easy with Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray. And it ultimately led to the demise of Cliff, being the head coach here with the Arizona Cardinals. And I distinctly remember working in the stadium, and he dropped that line that we were effed, talking about the game plan. When you say something like that, there's really no coming back from that. And I think he put it on full display that he was not happy with the situation with Coach Kingsbury, and something had to give. And I think for Coach Gannon, he's going to have to establish what type of rapport he wants to have with his franchise quarterback. And hopefully it's a good one, because if they're going to be butting heads the entire way through, you can see the same fate for him that you saw with Coach Kingsbury, but maybe even sooner than that.
Yeah. Lots of work to be done at the Cardinals headquarters in Tempe between now and the time they kick off the 2023 season. All right, we'll step aside here.
Yeah.
More of Train and Grose coming up on the other side.
Train and Grose.
Welcome back in. So, regular listeners to the podcast, first and foremost, thank you very much. Appreciate you giving us your time and hanging out with this 97th edition of Train and Growth. But regular listeners know that this is the type of podcast where we typically do pump the brakes and dad jokes. But because we're recording on Valentine's Day, we gave the pump the brake crew the night off so they could go out and hang out and be with their significant others. It's a staff of about, I don't know how many it is now, 10, 15 people out there that do the research and put together the pump the brakes topics that Sean brings to you every week on the podcast. But we'll have it. We'll be back with pump the brakes for our next episode. But just so you know, we gave them the week off, B-Train, because it's Valentine's Day.
It is Valentine's Day, and it's a time for love, and we love all of our listeners and all those people that support us. We love you so much, and we got nothing but the utmost respect for you.
How about this? Let's do one. Let's do one. Let's do one.
You got one.
Pump the brakes or not, Valentine's Day is a holiday.
Oh, pump the brakes.
Completely agree.
Yeah. It's an opportunity for the chocolate companies to make their money. It's a chance for these restaurants to get their money, and flowers to get their money, even perfumes and hotels. Everybody's getting paid tonight.
Grose?
No, I'm not pumping the brakes at all. I'm a hopeless romantic.
Oh, stop it.
Hey,
stop it.
I've been married 34 years, and I still believe in the holiday. In fact, my thing now is, as I get older, like I buy Karen a card and then I hide it so she can't find it. Sometimes I put it in her car when she's getting ready to drive to work or whatever. Check this out. I hid it in her laptop. So she called me when she got in the car this morning. She goes, "Oh, I'm so disappointed you didn't get me a Valentine's card." I'm like, "Oh, sorry about that." Then she got to the office, took her laptop off, opened it up, and the card fell out. Come on.
What? She didn't see it?
Well, I had it tucked in so she couldn't see it till she pulled her laptop out, and then she saw it.
It's pretty good.
Oh, she saw it. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought maybe she didn't see it after she opened the laptop. I was like, oh, my goodness.
Then she got it at the office. So like I said, I'm just a hopeless romantic. I'll let you two be cynical about it, and I'll just wish you both a happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, well, you know what, Mike, you can be mine anytime. You know, you're my boy. You're my boy, Blue.
There we go.
Well, you know what time it is.
Dad joke
I'm
time.
ready.
All right.
Yeah.
So, as always, there's a grading system to the dad joke of the week. No matter what, you're going to get one of these. If it's a quality dad joke, you are going to hear the applause and laughter. If it's above and beyond, you get what I call standing ovation. Grose likes to call it the clap. You'll get the clap. And however, there is that possibility where it just doesn't land and you get the prices right. Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right, so that's the grading system. B-Train laid on us on this Valentine's Day.
All right. What do you call a dog that can do magic?
What do you call it?
A labracadabrador.
You know why you're not getting the bump, 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 bump? Because of your delivery was so damn solid. If you're only listening to this, do yourself a favor, go to YouTube and watch just this portion of the program.
Yeah. I don't know how good the joke. I don't know how good the joke was, but the delivery, that sealed it. That absolutely sealed it. I like it. Yep. Take your bow. You earned it. That's absolutely solid.
I heard one this week that made me cringe, though. It said, "What's the difference between a guitar and a fish?"
Okay.
You can't tune a fish. Huh?
Oh, yeah.
Huh?
Come on.
Huh?
Come on.
That was an REO Speedwagon album way back in the day. There I go, dating myself again.
Wow.
You can tune a piano, but you can't tune a fish.
Boom. There it is.
Wow.
There it is.
Yeah. Well, with that,
I got one more.
Right,
I got one more.
What do you got?
I got one more. Did you hear about the mortician working overtime?
No.
He was dying to leave.
See, that's good. It's not bad.
again, that delivery sealed it for you.
Yeah. It's the camera work. I'll tell you this. The man explores the space when it comes to the camera when he's delivering his dad joke. It's towards the camera on the punchline, back away for the laughter. It's quality.
Yeah.
He's got that camera presence, doesn't he? That's going to do it for this edition, episode 97 of Train and Gross. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
We'll holla.